First, I'd like to thank my Office of Attorney General team for their expertise, patience, diligence, and perseverance they all demonstrated to produce a thorough, highly detailed report. Since the investigation's inception, more than 25 of our staff members, including attorneys, policy advisors, investigators, and support staff, have dedicated countless hours over 4.5 years to thoroughly investigating and finalizing the clergy report we are releasing today. In particular, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the attorneys and policy advisors involved in this effort. I think they're all present today. First, Tom Verticchio, Assistant Chief Deputy AG, Caitlin McKellis, Senior Policy Counsel, Wendy Cohen, Senior Policy Advisor, Darren Kincaid, Deputy Bureau Chief of Special Litigation, Eileen Boyle-Perrick, Senior AAG, Isaac Freelick Jones, AAG, Sarah Gallo, AAG, Sandra Gallant-Jones, AAG, John Hasitsky, AAG, and Elizabeth Jordan, AAG. Thank you. The clergy report has been a long time coming. Throughout our work on this investigation, there have been many challenges and intervening factors that may have contributed to the delay of releasing this report. We were not in a race. During the pandemic, we were faced with increased demands on staff due to the implementation and defense of emergency protocols, actions to protect essential workers, and other unexpected challenges that preoccupied many of our lead attorneys who worked on the clergy investigation. We also dealt with a ransomware attack that temporarily crippled our office's systems. Aside from these practical obstacles, this team has also had to surmount the emotional challenges that unavoidably accompany of an investigation of this sensitive subject matter. This team worked assiduously on this protracted, collaborative effort with grace and compassion. And again, I thank each and every one of you. Now, before we dive into the heart of this report, I believe it's important that I share my personal history with the Catholic Church so as to disabuse you of any notions that I have a personal axe to grind with the church. My mother was a faithful, practicing Catholic for the entirety of her life, praying every night and regularly attending church. She was a Haitian immigrant, and Catholicism was the official religion of Haiti during her time there. Consequently, I was raised and confirmed in the Catholic Church. My wife and I sent our children to Catholic school. I have personally witnessed how the Catholic Church has made tremendous contributions in education, assisting disabled children, helping the homeless, advocacy against violence, efforts to provide hope to abused and neglected children, and numerous other contributions the church has made to our society for its betterment. However, it is precisely because of its many virtuous deeds and benevolence that we, the public and many families, put faith in the Catholic Church and its leaders in ways that we do not trust other establishments. But when such trust is betrayed with abuse to children, and there are efforts to cover it up, the call for accountability should be resounding. We are here this morning to announce my office's report on a multi-year investigation into child sex abuse by members of the Catholic clergy in the state of Illinois. And this is our report. This report represents the state of Illinois' first comprehensive accounting of child sex abuse by members of the Catholic clergy in the 6 dioceses across Illinois, including the Diocese of Belleville, Joliet, Peoria, Rockford, Springfield, and the Archdiocese of Chicago. This investigation began in the latter half of 2018 under the leadership of then Attorney General Lisa Madigan. Even before I was sworn into office, I committed to continuing the investigation that my predecessor had initiated. Throughout the investigation, we had 2 goals. First, to obtain and provide a full public accounting of substantiated child sex abuse committed by Catholic clergy within the state of Illinois. Second, to give survivors an opportunity to be heard, recognizing that some of these survivors have spent decades on their path to healing. From the outset of the investigation, the leaders of the Illinois diocese pledged their full support and cooperation in assisting my office towards achieving these goals. Each ultimately fulfilled their pledge by providing access and working on policies and procedures. During our investigation, my attorneys and investigators examined thousands of files, reviewing more than 100,000 pages of documents held by the diocese. They spent endless hours engaged in interviews and conversations with the diocesan leadership and representations. Cooperation from the diocese aside, it was the survivors of child sex abuse who gave purpose and drive to this investigation. Absent their courage and willingness to come forward and discuss their experience, there would be no true investigative report. Over the course of this investigation, my office received more than 600 confidential contacts from survivors through emails, letters, in-person interviews, and phone calls. My investigation team prioritized treating each allegation with respect. They followed every lead that arose to ensure we conducted a thorough and comprehensive investigation. My team worked closely with survivors to record accounts of their experiences as children sexually abused by Catholic clerics. So I would like to express my sincere gratitude to each and every survivor, and to others who contacted my office for trusting us with their deeply personal experiences. Before this investigation, the Catholic Diocese of Illinois publicly listed only 103 substantiated child sex abusers, which substantiated meaning that available evidence supported the conclusion that the cleric or religious brother committed child sex abuse. Now, by comparison, this report reveals the names and detailed information of 451 Catholic clerics and religious brothers who abuse at least 1,997 children across all of the dioceses in the state of Illinois. This means that our investigation led to the disclosure of 348 more clerics than prior to our investigation. Now, there are 149 clerics that this report discloses that are not disclosed by the diocese. This report is organized into 5 sections. The first section explains the long-term impact of child sex abuse, which is particularly critical in this context. The second details each diocese's historic handling of child sex abuse, and specifically how inaction by Catholic bishops and archbishops often led to scores of abused children. The section also includes detailed narrative accounts of child sex abuse committed by Catholic clerics. Many of these narratives are told from the survivor's point of view, written in consultation with the survivor and based upon their experience. The third section covers diocese policies and practices related to allegations of child sex abuse. Our team had multiple conversations with various members of each diocese. This section includes concerns my office raised with the diocese about their policies, revealing how the diocese often modified their policies to address these concerns. When agreement couldn't be reached for modifications, our office made recommendations. The fourth section discusses data analysis undertaken by my office with a recognized data expert, showing the extent of child sex abuse by clerics in each Illinois diocese year by year over a 70-year period. Data expert Greg Ridgway reviewed the data that our office compiled. Significantly, the analysis reveals that each Illinois diocese underreported the number of child sex abusers in the Catholic clergy when they initially released those numbers to the public. And finally, one of the most important sections of the report, my office's recommendations to the diocese for the handling of future child sex abuse allegations against the Catholic clerics and religious brothers. This section of our report is distinguishable from similar reports issued by other states, not only because it's survivor-centered, but also because it contains 50 pages of detailed recommendations, such as how the diocese can address investigations and disclosures of child sex abuse, how the diocese can implement a mediation and compensation program for survivors, how the diocese can improve their investigations, how the diocese can better communicate with survivors, and how the diocese can be more transparent in publicly disclosing substantiated child sex abusers. This investigation has directly resulted in significant steps forward in the diocese policies related to investigations, disclosure and transparency, and survivor care and communication. Decades of Catholic leadership decisions and policies have allowed known child sex abusers to hide, often in plain sight. And because of the statute of limitations has frequently expired, many survivors of child sex abuse at the hands of Catholic clerics will never see justice in a legal sense. But it is my sincere hope that this report will shine light on those who violated their positions of power and trust to abuse innocent children, and on the men in church leadership who covered up that abuse. These perpetrators may never be held accountable in a court of law, but by naming them in this report, the intention is to provide the public with public accountability and a measure of healing to survivors who have long suffered in silence. Our office takes every instance of reported child abuse seriously, and I believe the breadth of this 700-page report evinces that. Moreover, We engage a consultant to design a website to ensure this information is easily accessible to the public. Nevertheless, the reality of child sex abuse does not end with this report. Consequently, I'd like to conclude by directing the public to appropriate agencies that can provide continued assistance and support. To report current child abuse allegations, we encourage you to contact the Department of Children and Family Services. And for past child abuse, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, or SNAP, can offer meaningful direction and support. I thank you for your time, and I want to again thank my staff and thank all of the survivors who've come forward, and at this point we'll take questions. There's a mix, and let me get to that data. There, of the 451, there are 330 who are dead.
The Archdiocese briefly said they had everything, everything's out there. Cardinal's on record saying the AG is not going to fight anything at the start of this because we're doing everything right. We've all done everything right. What does this tell you? I mean, again, you won. Is the church lying public? Or is this oversight? Is it competence? Is it some combination? How would you characterize it?
Well, as I mentioned, there were 103 disclosed prior to our investigations, and our investigations led to the disclosure of 348 more. I think the numbers sort of speak for themselves on that. Let me say that as I indicated, there was cooperation by the diocese. There was, as I speak of those numbers, there's still 149 clerics that the diocese do not disclose, that our report discloses.
That, so it's 149, but it's 160 because some of them are spread to a couple times, right?
Correct.
Do you think that clerics reporting that the diocese did not do what they did, that somebody had a credible allegation that they weren't part of?
So that's the 149 that I mentioned, or the 160, if depending on how you want to count, were from religious orders, and the, I guess, position of the church. I'll let the church speak for themselves, but to the extent that they were ministering under the diocese and had significant contact, either in schools or otherwise, we considered as part of our investigation important to disclose each and every cleric that abused children.
And that was the point of contention that some dioceses did not want to be
That's correct. There's 149, which is a significant number, more than the initial number of clerics initially disclosed by all the dioceses together.
At the investigation in Pennsylvania, and you look at the investigation here. Can you put it in perspective in how there's the amount of Catholics where the amount of Catholics here, the amount of the population and the amount of population, and speaking to staff this morning, staff is saying numbers are staggering, but that this investigation reveal something big, that the numbers are just so large in comparison to what was found.
Yeah, well, let me first thank now Governor, former Attorney General Josh Shapiro, for his initiation of the investigation in Pennsylvania, and for his initial report, because that led to my predecessor and others to initiate needed investigations in other jurisdictions. You know, I mentioned that we weren't in a race during my opening comments. We certainly weren't in a competition either. What we wanted to do is to be thorough, to allow voice to each and every survivor who had the courage to come forward, not to prematurely release an inadequate report, maybe because some of you all were asking, where's the report? Where's the report? It was more important for us to get it right. I do believe there are distinctions between our report and other reports. I don't have all the data on Pennsylvania's numbers versus ours, and quite frankly, I don't want to engage in that. I think one of the critical areas that, as I mentioned earlier, that distinguishes us from other reports is the detailed nature of our recommendations for things that the diocese can still take up.
Well, then we follow up.